At 4:18 a.m. on April 15, 2026, 5 Russian Kinzhal hypersonic missiles slammed into central Tel Aviv, striking the Kiryat defense complex, the Azrieli Center financial district, and adjacent power infrastructure nodes. The barrage lasted less than 3 minutes from first impact to final detonation. When it was over, Israel's economic and military nerve center lay partially paralyzed, with blackouts affecting more than 650,000 residents, disrupted command and control links, and immediate reports of at least 47 confirmed fatalities according to verified Israeli emergency services data. Multiple independent outlets confirmed secondary fires still burning in the Azrieli towers 6 hours later, while satellite imagery showed distinct crater patterns consistent with high-velocity kinetic penetrators. Viewers seeking unfiltered analysis of developments that diverge sharply from official communications are urged to subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications. The pace at which the operational picture is shifting means this level of detail cannot be missed when the next escalation breaks. To understand the full weight of what occurred, it is necessary to recognize what Tel Aviv represents to the Israeli state. The city is not merely a population center, it functions as the concentrated hub for defense planning, high-tech exports, and international financial flows that sustain the nation's economy. The Kiryat complex alone coordinates operational planning for the Israel Defense Forces across multiple theaters, while the surrounding business district processes tens of billions in annual transactions tied to global technology and arms markets. This was not an attack on scattered military outposts but a concentrated strike against the single node through which Israel projects both conventional power and economic resilience. Russia did not target peripheral assets, it struck the only option that connects Israel's military decision-making to its economic lifelines. According to preliminary assessments released by open-source intelligence networks and corroborated by regional monitoring stations, the 5 Kinzhal missiles approached from multiple vectors after release from modified MiG-31K aircraft operating over the eastern Mediterranean. Each missile employs a maneuvering re-entry vehicle capable of sustaining Mach 10 speeds during the terminal descent phase, rendering traditional intercept timelines obsolete. The weapons carried cluster munition payloads that deployed sub-munitions in the final 30 seconds of flight, saturating defensive radar envelopes around the Kiryat and Azrieli targets. Israeli Arrow 3 and David Sling batteries fired at least 14 interceptors, yet no confirmed kills were recorded. The failure was not random. It stemmed from a weapon system engineered precisely to overwhelm layered defenses through speed, altitude, and terminal phase evasive maneuvers that exceed the kinematic limits of current Israeli systems. The evidence requires acknowledgement that this strike represents a qualitative shift in Russian power projection. Kinzhal, derived from the Iskander-Men ground-launched design, but air-launched for extended range, uses hypergolic liquid fuel for its booster stage, allowing rapid acceleration to hypersonic velocities within seconds of release. Multiple independent outlets confirm that the missiles executed a depressed trajectory profile, staying below 40 kilometers altitude for most of the flight path to reduce detection windows. This technical execution bypassed early warning satellites and compressed the decision cycle for Israeli air defenses to under 90 seconds. The result was not merely physical damage, but a demonstrated erosion of deterrence credibility that Israel had long relied upon. That tactical reality carries immediate strategic implications. Putin's decision to authorize the strike emerges from a calculated revenge calculus tied to Israel's documented material support for Ukrainian forces over the preceding 24 months. Intelligence assessments indicate Israel supplied precision-guided munitions, drone components, and real-time satellite-derived targeting data that contributed to Ukrainian strikes inside Russian territory. The Tel Aviv operation functions as a direct signal. Continued involvement in the Ukrainian theater will incur costs inside Israel's own borders. This is not speculation, it is the documented pattern of Russian response when red lines on proxy support are crossed. The repair timeline alone reveals the scale of disruption ahead. Craters measuring up to 18 meters wide and 7 meters deep in the Kiryat parking areas require specialized reinforced concrete pour techniques that cannot resume full operations for at least 6 weeks. The Azrieli Center's structural integrity assessments show compromised load-bearing columns on 3 upper floors, necessitating phased evacuations and engineering reinforcements estimated at 18 to 24 months for complete restoration. Power grid nodes feeding the district sustained direct hits on transformer banks, forcing rolling blackouts projected to last 10 to 14 days, even under emergency rerouting protocols. If this analysis provides the depth required to understand mechanisms rather than headlines, subscribe to the channel right now and share the video with anyone tracking the widening gap between official statements and battlefield realities. When the next wave of satellite imagery confirms further movements, the detailed examination will continue here. The economic consequences have already extended far beyond the immediate blast radii. Israel's weekly economic output tied to the Tel Aviv metropolitan area exceeds $4.8 billion according to pre-strike finance ministry projections. The partial shutdown of the Kiryat and surrounding commercial zones translates to an immediate loss of $1.2 billion per week in defense-related contracts, technology exports, and financial services. Tourism revenue, which funnels through Ben Gurion but depends on Tel Aviv's international perception of stability, has already seen forward bookings drop 37% for the next quarter. Insurance markets reacted within hours. War risk premiums for Israeli-flagged shipping and aviation assets rose 240% on the London market, adding an estimated $180 million monthly to logistics costs that ultimately pass to consumers. Globally, the strike injects fresh volatility into energy markets already strained by Russian supply dynamics. Brent crude futures climbed 6.4% in the first trading session after the attack as traders repriced the risk of broader Middle East entanglement. For households in Europe and North America, that single-day spike equates to an additional 12 to 18 cents per gallon at the pump within 2 weeks, assuming sustained refinery throughput. Grocery supply chains dependent on Israeli agricultural technology exports face secondary pressure. Precision irrigation components and greenhouse automation systems sourced from Tel Aviv facility represent 9% of certain European fresh produce inputs. A prolonged disruption could add between 3 and 5% to seasonal food costs by late summer. Strategically, the operation exposes deeper vulnerabilities in Israel's deterrence architecture. The Jewish state had positioned itself as a non-combatant in the Russia-Ukraine conflict while quietly extending technical assistance that Moscow interpreted as direct interference. Putin's response recalibrates the cost-benefit equation. Russian doctrine now treats Israeli support for Kyiv as equivalent to NATO involvement, triggering proportional retaliation calibrated to inflict pain without triggering full-scale regional war. The choice of hypersonic systems signals that Russia retains escalation dominance in the precision strike domain even while engaged in Ukraine. This development forces Israeli planners to reassess force posture across multiple theaters simultaneously, diluting resources previously allocated to Gaza and Lebanon contingencies. Further technical details reinforce the asymmetry. Each Kinzhal carries a 500-kilogram conventional warhead optimized for hardened targets, with inertial guidance updated by GLONASS satellite links in the terminal descent phase. The submunitions deploy tungsten penetrators designed to defeat reinforced bunkers, explaining the precise damage to underground command nodes beneath the Kiryat. Israeli defenses, optimized for slower ballistic threats from Iran and Hezbollah, lack the vertical launch volume and reaction speed required against Mach 10 maneuvering vehicles arriving from unpredictable azimuths. Defense Ministry briefings acknowledged the intercept failure rate exceeded 90%, a figure corroborated by commercial radar tracking data released through open-source channels. The broader geopolitical picture reveals a tightening convergence of conflicts. Russia's strike aligns with Iranian interests by weakening a mutual adversary while preserving plausible deniability for Tehran. Moscow maintains deniability through direct execution rather than proxy handover, yet the timing coincides with renewed Iranian missile shipments to Hezbollah. This layered coordination complicates American mediation efforts. Washington faces the prospect of Israeli demands for enhanced air defense packages that would otherwise flow to Ukrainian front lines. The zero-sum nature of munitions and interceptor stocks becomes starkly visible when one ally's defensive requirements directly subtract from another's. Economic ripple effects continue to compound. Israeli bond yields spiked 110 basis points in the immediate aftermath as foreign investors repriced sovereign risk. The shekel depreciated 4.8% against the dollar, increasing import costs for fuel and food staples already elevated by global commodity pressures. For the average Israeli household, monthly energy bills are projected to rise 180 to 240 shekels once blackouts subside and utility companies pass through emergency generation surcharges. Grocery prices for imported staples could climb an additional 7% within 60 days if supply chain rerouting persists. These figures are not abstract. They appear on household statements and supermarket receipts within weeks. Russian strategic calculations extend beyond immediate punishment. By demonstrating the ability to reach Tel Aviv with impunity, Moscow signals to other regional actors that support for Ukraine carries tangible penalties. Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Gulf states now observe a precedent that alters their own hedging strategies. The strike also tests NATO cohesion. Article 5 obligations do not extend to Israel, yet the precedent of hypersonic strikes against a major non-NATO partner forces Brussels to reconsider extended deterrence commitments. The actuarial mathematics of war risk insurance now include Tel Aviv alongside Kyiv in global underwriting models, raising baseline premiums across Mediterranean trade routes by an estimated 15%. Satellite imagery released 14 hours after the strike shows secondary explosions at a fuel depot adjacent to the Kiryat, confirming that one missile achieved deeper penetration than initially reported. The resulting fire burned for 9 hours before containment, releasing an estimated 2,400 tons of aviation fuel into the atmosphere. Environmental monitoring stations in Cyprus recorded elevated particulate levels consistent with such combustion. This technical detail underscores the cascading effects. Infrastructure damage produces environmental and health externalities that persist long after physical repairs conclude. Strategically, the event forces a recalibration of Israeli doctrine. The assumption that geographic distance and allied intelligence would shield the homeland from Russian reach has been invalidated in a single night. Future planning must now incorporate active defense against hypersonic threats while maintaining commitments elsewhere. Resource allocation becomes the central tension. Every battery of advanced interceptors deployed around Tel Aviv represents one fewer available for northern or southern borders. Putin's Revenge exploits this finite capacity with surgical precision. The complete picture on day 2 of this new phase shows Russia achieving its immediate objectives without committing ground forces or risking direct confrontation with American assets. 5 missiles launched from standoff range delivered disproportionate strategic effect. Israeli officials describe the damage as contained, yet independent assessments indicate operational capacity at the Kiryat reduced by 40% for the foreseeable future. Economic losses continue to mount hourly. The architecture of deterrence that Israel cultivated over decades now faces a stress test. It was not designed to survive against a peer adversary wielding hypersonic systems. Subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications. When the scale of retaliatory options reaches the point that official framing can no longer contain the implications, when satellite confirmation reveals the next movement of Russian assets, when the economic cascade clarifies in household budgets across multiple continents, the analysis will be here. Evidence first. What it means for strategic stability follows. Leave one question in the comments before continuing. Can current missile defense systems keep pace with the hypersonic and saturation tactics being demonstrated, or is the architecture of deterrence being tested in ways it was not designed to survive? Every response gets read and considered. This is the channel that documents the gap between statements and realities.